So, welcome to an evening with the author. It is so good to have you, and we are going to dive into this evening's topic, which is finding security. I am Dr. Claire, author, speaker, spiritual mentor, and coach with Blazing Star Network, where I help leaders organize their busy lives to have more time to connect with themselves, the people they love the most, and God without stress and guilt. And that's an important piece, without stress and guilt. So when we think about finding security at a level, it is about control and having something, someone on whom we can count. People and things can give us a sense of security. We like things that are reliable, predictable, comfortable, and safe. And the safe kind of comes out of those three. So I'm just going to read a bit from How to Pray, Living Holy Through Honest Surrendered Heart Praying. And this is on page 14. Actually, we're going to be looking at the last section of chapter 1. Isn't it funny how we can use the same words to mean different things? Security seems to be one of those. For some of us, it means a job that we will have until retirement. For some people, security is as simple as having a building in which to sleep when the night comes. All these point to the desire for something on which we can count, something that is reliably predictable and ensures our comfort and safety. And when you think about it, what you see as offering security depends on where you are and where you're coming from. The person who is homeless right now, they're not concerned with anything fancy. Just give them a house over their head. The person who doesn't have a job, just give them a job. Whereas somebody who's been working for a long time, they'll start thinking pension and stuff like that. I mean, some people do that early o'clock, but it becomes more pressing when you're further along. And so there are different ways in which we understand and look and seek security, but there's a level at which we all do. But there's a problem. Where can we find security? At a level, it's a we have different places we looked at. We kind of hinted at some of these, but when you think of it, family to an extent, but some people's relationships with their family are toxic. And even when our relationship is solid, there are limitations. Same thing with friends. Some people are blessed to have good friends. There are limitations wherever we go. When it comes to social media, that's a whole different thing by itself. It can be deceptive because it may seem to have a depth that it does not have. And we hear of people who getting caught in scams and losing money and different things because they're looking at social media as being more real than it is. At the same time, we can form good friendships through social media. I know I won't say I formed good friendship through social media, but it's allowed me to reconnect with some people, and but then the depth comes outside of that, and I've met new people through it. So it's there, it is what it is, but to look to it for security, which some people do when they're lonely and stuff like that, then what about our communities? To an extent, but the communities are changing. Politicians and the political system, some people look there, that's, I would call that an unfortunate reality. But some people do look there, and even there, it's going to come up short. The country, the world. And here's the thing, everything is limited because we are in a finite reality. And in the finite reality, we're also dealing with fallible human beings. And then add to that is the constant change in which we find ourselves. It's like we're in a state of flux, especially this last year and a piece. we've had the accelerated change because of technology and all of that, but then we've had other things impacting us, that pandemic that nobody really understood. I said to somebody the other day, does it really meet the criteria of a pandemic? It was like if I committed sacrilege, but I mean, it's serious. And just the length of time it took even the experts to grasp what was happening. And I was speaking with somebody who is quite an expert in her scientific field, and she said the truth is we're still learning about it. So we had that dire thing happen, and then this year with the weather. And where do we look for security? Can we look in any of these things? And on pages 14 and 15, I say we live in a time of rapid change. We know that change has always been a part of life. It's different now, though. The acceleration of technological development seems to have accelerated the pace of innovation in general. It is as if before you can figure out one thing, it has changed. Take Susie. Susie has worked in communications for a long time. She's always been very competent and delivered good results. Now she's struggling as she tries to keep up with all the new stuff. She thought that she was doing well with reaching people through the whole Facebook thing. Then Instagram came along. Now there's Clubhouse. Now she wonders if she'll make it. It's not normal for her anymore. It feels as if she's adrift and missing a part of herself. Related to these rapid shifts because of technology is the expansion of, and to some extent, the democratization of information. While major media outlets still control much of the narrative concerning events, issues, and people, other voices are able to tell their stories and get their message out to a wider audience. All of this and more makes some people uncomfortable. Things are not normal anymore. We now have to face issues and situations that were not previously part of our everyday reality. We may find ourselves wishing for a past time when things were normal. We felt more secure then. We may even find ourselves praying that way. However, is that the way God wants us to pray? Is God stuck in the normal past? It is true that many of us just feel frazzled and out of control. It's as if we are missing a part of ourselves. Hence the wish and the prayers for normal. It is natural that rapid change would cause us to feel some sense of instability. However, the extent to which it affects our sense of who we are and how whole we feel points to our foundations. So let's look a little at what it is to be frazzled and out of control as we think about what we just read. The rapid change and illusionary lifestyles. That refers more to social media because people project a particular image, even when we know them. um, Very few people are going to share the real bad on social. Few people are going to put it out there for public consumption because you don't know how far it will go. And so a lot of times what we see is more an illusion than reality. Um, and again, mention the uncertainty, and we end up frazzled, out of control. There goes normalcy. And the next that happens these days seems to be often catastrophic. Everything seems to be enlarged, everything seems to be to the nth degree almost. I was reading on AccuWeather where they were saying it looks like there's going to be a new normal for the hurricane season. Who wants to hear that? But it's true. And so it seems as if we are out of time and out of space. And going back to the book, pages 17 to the top of 19, I talk about breathing spaces, and I'll read a piece here and then I'll come back to this later. It's easy to miss parts of you when you feel as if you don't have the space to breathe. Then you're tempted to take whatever ingredients are at hand to bake the cake. And maybe if you've read up to this point, you think that's all well and good, but I can't even think about these things. I've been challenged. I've been very challenged recently. It seems as if I just run from activity to activity, from helping one person to helping another. My family obligations have me feeling overwhelmed. I'm exhausted at the end of most days. I am so afraid that I am not up to the task and that I will burn out. I'm afraid I'm missing something. I'm not sure because I can't think, can't pray. When I think of the future, I try not to think of the future. I badly need a space for myself to think, to pray, to find myself, to breathe, to be at peace again. Somehow we feel that if we could just find that space, we would have a greater level of security. There is some truth in this. When we have enough space to reconnect with ourselves, as it were, we have a greater measure of peace and confidence. However, there is a danger. There are many people who promise peace. There are many groups who offer the wherewithal to get in touch with your inner person. However, many of them deify the person and not the living God. Thus, the self becomes a circular reference point, the be all and end all of all decisions, an arbitrator of right and wrong. This security, therefore, is grounded in feeling rather than the reality of the love of God seen in Jesus Christ on the cross. It becomes a security of self fulfillment and self elevation without accountability to God and our neighbors. Let's take a look at Molly, a product of this type of group. Molly felt such tranquility, it even amazed her. She had attended a retreat where she had learned that she was the most important person in the universe and her well being came first. She didn't have to answer to anyone. She needed to shake off negative people from her life. One of her first tasks when she returned from the retreat was to tell her sister that she could no longer count on her for support. Parasite. A weight had lifted. She was free. Eva asked Molly what would happen with Susie. Couldn't she at least point Susie to some services that could help her? How could Susie cope now that she had, without warning, lost the support on which she counted? Molly said she was not giving up her newfound space for anyone. She had learned how important she was and how to treat herself kindly. No one was going to take that away from her. Molly's peace was maintained around herself alone and not the commandment to love God and neighbor. It was an insecure breathing space. Any reaching out that stretched her would shatter her sense of peace and security. When you inhabit the wrong breathing space, you miss you, for you're missing the you as God created you to be in community, loving God and neighbor. Of course, you are important. Of course, you should take care of yourself. So, in seeking security, we can turn to the wrong places, the wrong people, and get the wrong messages that disconnect us from community and get us more in a self centered, inward turning mode. So, we can find security in many places, but they will always be limited. You know, I went through all the different places and the limitations that there are. But we do need some level of security in this world, even with the limitations. And the thing is, these limitations should push us to the place of ultimate security in God, where we are fully planted on solid ground. And here I go to page 15. In many ways, this chapter is about foundations. On which foundations are our lives built? Is it on the foundation of being acceptable to others? Is it on the foundation of values, expectations, and priorities? Is it built on seeking to be like the stars, as in celebrities? What about a foundation of partial self awareness and an avoidance of others and going beneath the surface to greater self knowledge? Is it built on our sense of normal? These are all shaky foundations. They change, sometimes seemingly on a whim. That's why it's important to know and accept the unique person that God says you are, to align yourself with God's values, to keep discovering and growing, to find your security in God and seek guidance to roll with the changes around you. That's what Stefano ultimately did. Stefano felt as if his heart was squeezing and it hurt. He had lost everything that he held there. He had watched as one by one his prized possessions were taken from him. The rug had been pulled from under his feet. He had not been able to keep up with all the changes at his workplace. God knows he had tried. At the end of the day, however, his efforts had not been enough. He had been let go, fired. It hurt. Now, without the money to pay the bills, he was in danger of being homeless. Stefano felt despair. Then he remembered God was bigger than his situation. He remembered that God did not change, even though the circumstances around him changed. Stefano prayed as he had never done before. Before God, he celebrated who he was and faced his weaknesses. He was completely honest with God. His bitterness had become a trap. He gave it and his entire situation over to God. He confessed that he had been building on the wrong foundations, trusting in his success and accomplishments instead of trusting God. He recommitted himself to God and gave the situation over to God and asked God for direction. Suddenly, for the first time in months, Stefano felt peace. He followed what God told him to do. The peace came first. The situation did not change overnight, but bit by bit, he experienced the turnaround in his situation. It's easy to rely on our accomplishments and past successes. Though shifting and fleeting, this is what society encourages us to do. Of course, accomplishments and successes are great. We thank God for them and for what they allow us to do. However, they are not stable enough to provide a foundation. They are not stable enough to provide security. That comes from God. This leads us to the importance of space. So it's just an encouragement to get on really solid ground, move from shaky foundations, and plant ourselves in God, as it were, where ultimate security lies. And we know with security comes peace. And yeah, with security comes peace. So let's look now. We talked about one type of breathing space. Let's look at the other type of breathing space, and this one is fleshed out more fully in the new book, Help I Want Out. But it all ties together. So when we think of breathing space, this is where we really need to go to our God connection. So it calls for a place where we pray and strengthen that connection with God, and then have that security that comes from God. And that puts us in alignment with who we are, in alignment with God, in alignment with our call. I don't talk that much about call in this book. I do it more in Help I Want Out, and we'll get to that one. But it puts us in alignment, and then we can have strong people connections because they're coming out of this God centeredness, the God connection, the security that comes from God alignment. So when we go to people, we're not expecting from them what they can't give because we're getting that from God. And then we continue in prayer, and it's a circle, a cycle that goes around. So, oh, let me read one more thing before I go over to you and we talk a little more about this, about the breathing space. And this is, yeah. We can learn from Jesus, who knew how to make space for himself. He had times for prayer. He got away when he could. However, he was totally committed to loving and serving God and the people he encountered. He was a man of compassion. We also get a sense of peace about him. There was no striving except for Gethsemane. And even there, it ended in peace as he submitted to God's will. He was calm and ready. Thus, we learn from Jesus the importance of breathing space. Such space empowers us to avoid missing ourselves so that we live in love as we experience God more fully. And so, resources centered on prayer and the work I do empower you to face your situation, establish values and priorities that are in line with God's, find your security in God, and continually bring all that you are before God in honest, surrendered heart prayer, and live with greater clarity and peace in the world. And that is the end of the presentation. Thank you for sharing it. And I'm going to, what I'll do is stop the recording now, and then we will go into discussion.